Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm Jon Macri, and I am joined, as always, by the great Nic Bodiford. Nick, it's week 10. The NFL trade deadline is behind us. We've got a few, fantasy relevant trades that we'll cover in the show today, but it's really crunch time here as fantasy managers try to make that push for the fantasy playoffs over the next month or so. So how you doing?
I'm good. Dog broke my nose this week.
What?
Which I think is on brand for week 10, how we're all feeling in week
Yeah.
10. How are you?
Yeah, dogs are breaking our noses. Players are breaking our hearts. That's just the regular occurrence here at this point in the season, man. But damn, that's crazy. Obviously, you got some aggressive dog going on there, but hopefully you're all right. You can make it through the show. But yeah.
Yeah, I was doing a what do you call a matador situation with a blanket, and
Sure.
he won. He won
Yeah.
so hard with the
Yeah.
crown. He's 100 pounds, so that was my fault.
Yeah. No, I'd say we'll give him the point for that one. And damn, that's crazy. So yeah, we'll get into it here. We'll do our usual kind of players to highlight that we like and dislike. We're going to utilize the quarterback streamer article that Nick writes up, which includes defensive special team streamers as well. We'll talk wide receiver cornerback matchups, man zone data, offensive line, defensive line matchup info as well, and then some picked out players from Nate's start sit article that we're going to highlight here too. So all of this stuff is available in article form on pff.com. You can get access to that with a PFF subscription, as well as like live grades and snap counts and stuff during the games, access to all the grades and everything like that, tools, rankings, everything that you'd need to help dominate your fantasy leagues. But Nick, let's get into it here. For week 10, we're going to get into it with the quarterback streamers of the week first. And we start with Justin Herbert. Is Jay Herbs back?
Yeah, he is. This has been so cool. Like I really have a soft spot for coaches who admit when they are wrong and they make necessary changes. And like that's why Brian Dable and Sean McDermott endeared themselves to me with the way that after the first 2 seasons of Josh Allen's career, they went, okay, we got to throw on early downs and stop putting this guy who is a struggling quarterback. We can't keep asking him to throw for the first time on 3rd and 6.
Yeah.
And what we've seen with Los Angeles is a big philosophical shift since their week 5 bye. So Los Angeles 53.1% pass play rate when leading by 7 points or more since the bye, ranks eighth among NFL teams. They're facing the Tennessee Titans this week. Last I checked, they were 8.5 point home favorites. This bodes positively for Justin Herbert's passing rate. Even if they get up big, we can rely on their new look play calling tendencies. The Titans defense is not a bad unit, but they have lost multiple members of the secondary for the year. They've lost a starting cornerback and now a starting safety for the year. And their pass rush is really, really ineffectual. They rank 30th in quarterback pressure rate and 29th in pass rush win rate. Justin Herbert is, and this has always been the case with him, he's one of the best quarterbacks on non-pressured dropbacks in the NFL. He's among 34 NFL quarterbacks with at least 100 non-pressured dropbacks. He's second in PFF passing grade, third in big-time throws, second in big-time throw rate, et cetera, et cetera. I think even though there are still some really good members of this Titans defense, this still profiles as a matchup for Herbert to thrive in. And we're going to talk a little bit more later about specific matchups, because in looking at this matchup, I did consider a couple of these wide receivers for the matchups column. I found it very difficult to identify a potential weak point. And so we'll see where I guess the conversation goes here on the Chargers passing game components. But I think like this just profiles as a situation where Herbert can just get it done. He's a QB1 this week. On one team with pretty decent sized pot. I have moved on from Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams, and now I didn't think I was going to be starting Justin Herbert because the beginning of this year he was like a quarterback 18 or whatever. But now I'm in on him, so let's do this.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And you mentioned the start, excuse me, the start to the season, right? Like weeks 1 to 6, he had just a 58.2 passing grade that ranked 27th of 36 qualifying quarterbacks, and he was QB 27 for fantasy over that stretch, right? But over the last 3 weeks, weeks 7 to 9, he owns a 92.8 passing grade that ranks first among all 34 qualifying quarterbacks, and he's QB 8 for fantasy over that stretch. So I'm 100% here for the Justin Herbert turnaround, and definitely fine starting him this week. But who else do you got as a quarterback streamer this week?
Yeah, next one, Drake May. So some of this is going to depend on the Chicago Bears defensive health, which has been
Right.
a big problem, and some of their coaching decisions. Like Matt Eberflus, this guy really needs to be demoted and just be a defensive coordinator. I don't understand why these guys who are they know if they're built for this or not. Like, be a defensive coordinator and make like $6 million a year or what? Like, why are we? I don't know. It's goofy to me. It's very I don't get it. I don't get what this guy's deal is. Anyway, things to note here that fantasy managers should go pay attention to at the end of this week. Andrew Billings, defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears, one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL, particularly as a pass rusher. This guy injured his pectoral. He could miss. Jaquan Brisker, stud, strong safety, remains in the concussion protocol despite being out last week as well. Jalen Jones, shoulder injury. Looks like Kyler Gordon returning from a hamstring strain, missed last week. LP on Wednesday. That puts him on track to play, but we'll have to see. Soft tissue injuries are not guaranteed to just be healthy. We can talk about Nico Collins later or something. Defensive back Terrell Smith, ankle injury, LP. We'll see. And most importantly, perhaps Montez Sweat missed last week with a shin injury. He was a limited participant on Wednesday. He went, I think, DNP, and then an L. Or no. I think it was I think it went DNP, LP, DNP on Friday. And the idea was that they would give him the day off, try to get him right, but he was not able to go, which a lot of these guys will just play through stuff. So the fact that he actually missed is like, this isn't a non-issue. Anyway, Drake May, talked about this a lot in the NFL draft process. One of Drake May's strengths, so newsflash there, sorry I didn't break that. New England Patriots at the Chicago Bears this week. Drake May, he is a really, really good scrambler. He's very good at moving the chains. If you go look at, there's a piece, if you look at the QB defense streamers piece this week, you can find the link to, I included him in one of the, in the best rushers in the 2024 NFL draft article that I did this summer, because this guy he has an extremely high first down and or touchdown conversion rate. May 65% first down and or touchdown conversion rate, ranks number 1 overall among 15 NFL quarterbacks with at least 20 scrambles. This has remained true since his time in college. He knows when to scramble and he knows how to pick up the first down. That is crucial for your success rate. He can go do the things that he needs to do to keep the offense on track. His throwing, he's getting there. 16th big time throw rate, 19th completion rate, 34th PFF passing grade. But he's got a cannon and he can get the job done on the ground. Against this banged up Bears defense, I think that he remains a QB1 starter.
Yeah, so that's kind of the point for me too. Like, is how healthy the Bears defense is going to be. Like you said, Jalen Jones obviously a big part of it, but Montez Sweat specifically. Like, this Patriots offensive line has been really bad. They rank like 30th in pass blocking grade, and the Bears defensive line as a whole ranks top 10 in pass rush grade. But Montez Sweat is a huge part of that, right? And hoping to keep Drake May clean, like you said, he has the ability to scramble, so that does help his potential. But he's also been poor under pressure, outside of obviously that one like highlight reel touchdown that he had last week, which was amazing. But for the most part, he ranks, I think, 31st among 36 qualifying quarterbacks in PFF passing grade when under pressure, with the 7th highest turnover worthy play rate. But Yeah, I mean, I like the potential a lot more if some of those defensive players can't go, because the Bears, like you said, their defense has been solid. They're actually allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks as well, and rank as the fourth hardest matchup for quarterbacks in the strength of schedule tool. But again, the key players on the defense missing is a big part of that. Jaquan Brisker is going to be out as well, like you said, and he's been out since like week 4 or 5 or week 5 with the same concussion. So I don't know what's going on with him, but Montez Sweat for sure. That's definitely a concern. Jalen Jones, obviously a massive concern as well on the outside. So lots going to depend, I think, on the health of the Bears defense for me too. All right, so I included a QB streamer this week, and I went with Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets going against the Arizona Cardinals. So Rodgers, he currently sits as the overall QB 14 on the season. He's managed just 2 top 12 weekly finishes, but to me at least stands out as a potential streaming option this week in a favorable matchup. And again, considering the advantage in the trenches is where I've kind of highlighted a lot of the favorable matchup for Rodgers, because when he has a clean pocket to work from, it's been an area of strength for him this season. He's earned an 80.9 passing grade, which ranks 14th, but more importantly, he's delivered a league leading 13 big time throws, and the third best 5.0 big time throw rate when he's been kept clean, which to me at least allows him to kind of utilize his high end receiving threats in both Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. The Jets also own the second best matchup for quarterbacks this week against Arizona. And then just quickly looking again at the matchup in the trenches there, the Jets offensive line have allowed the fourth lowest pressure rate in the league, while the Cardinals defensive line ranks 30th in pass rush grade and ranked 29th in pressure rate. So I came away liking Aaron Rodgers quite a bit this week, as kind of maybe a potential low end QB1 if he can pull this off.
Yeah, I left him on the cutting room floor as one of the QBs to stream. One thing to note with the O-line, there are a lot of injuries. PFF's own Nathan Yonke has seemingly been tracking that on Twitter this week, so folks can stay abreast of the situation by checking his Twitter X feed. If most of them can go, I really like this.
Nice. Like it. All right. Quick ad break here from our friends at BetterHelp. Think of a time recently when you didn't feel like you could be your full self, like you were hiding behind a mask. October is the season for wearing masks. We're not in October anymore, but we're still talking about it. Some of us feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to at work and social settings around our family. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. Therapy can be really useful to get a better understanding of how your mind actually works and how to become more aware of your own patterns of behavior and how to improve them. It's useful for everybody, not just people struggling with something specific. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is a convenient, flexible, and entirely online way to get therapy that's right for you. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So visit betterhelp.com/PFF fantasy to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PFF fantasy. All right, Nick, let's talk about some wide receiver cornerback matchups here that you've highlighted. And we're going to start right away with the first one. Darnell Mooney of the Atlanta Falcons going up against Alontae Taylor of the New Orleans Saints. What do you like about this matchup?
So, okay, the Saints secondary is now a shell of its former self. They've traded away Marshawn Lattimore. They've got one guy on injured reserve. They've got one more on the injury report currently. Basically, Alontae Taylor, he's their starting slot corner, and he's not any good. But what they've done is, because he's their last remaining starter, is they've pushed him to the perimeter. And where he started last week and where he went after Marshawn Lattimore aggravated his hamstring is lines up with where Darnell Mooney and he will they're going to take at least a plurality of snaps against one another. Just take me at my word. I mean, I guess I could go through. I don't like just tearing these guys down. So maybe if you want to get into the data, you guys can go read about Taylor's unimpressive feats. But as for Mooney, like Darnell Mooney, he's been awesome. So among 64 NFL wide receivers with at least 190 receiving snaps, Mooney ranks 28th in target rate, 20th in deep target rate, 16th in yards per out run, and ties for 13th in missed tackles forced and second in explosive pass plays with 19. Specifically, this defense really is pretty explosive pass play friendly. I think Mooney's just kind of going to get loose here. It is worth noting on the Falcons injury report, we have Drake London, who was initially reported with both a hip pointer and an oblique strain. Now it's only being called a hip. That might just be Todd Bowles being an old school coach and just saying, just put it as one. I don't know. He's, trending toward playing, but it's still dealing with a soft tissue thing. And Kyle Pitts appeared on the injury report yesterday as a limited participant with his fourth recorded hamstring injury. Don't know if he suffered that in practice and if he's going to be a DNP today, or if he, positively started the week as a limited participant and he's turning toward playing. We're going to figure that out as today's injury report comes out. But point is, Darnell Mooney, he's the number 3 guy there, and the numbers 1 and 2 are both playing through injury, theoretically, if they suit up. So I like this one a lot. Also, I always get a little leery when the interim head coach is not an offensive coach. I wish you luck, Mr. Rizzi, or what have you, but what the team needs is competence on offense, and I don't know if the special teams coordinator, who is the interim head coach, is going to get it done. And I know Antonio Pierce is like a linebackers guy, but the way that this team's going to start to turn things around is, anyway, through the offense. I kind of feel like maybe we can pick on this unit. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, fair enough. I love this because Mooney, he was highlighted for me as well. Like I was gonna talk about him if you didn't. So instead, I'll just continue to gas up Darnell Mooney as well here, because I really like what he's done so far this season, and I included him in the O-line D-line matchup article because an advantage in the trenches could potentially lend to Mooney's fantasy potential this week, on top of the cornerback matchup, like you mentioned. His target rate on non-pressure dropbacks is 23.4%. That ranks second on the team behind only Drake London, who may be out for this game, like you said. Meanwhile, Mooney's 16% target rate on pressure dropbacks ranks fourth among the team's 5 qualifying receivers in those situations. And there should be fewer pressure dropbacks this week, even though the Falcons' offensive line, they're about average in most pass blocking metrics, but it's the Saints' defensive line who stink. They rank 26th in pass rush grade. They're allowing with a 62.4. The Saints as a team are also allowing the 11th most points per game to the wide receiver position, and they're the 11th best matchup for wide receivers according to the strength of schedule tool as well. And like you said, they're going to be without Marshawn Lattimore, their top coverage corner, who was traded to Washington. So it does look pretty promising of a matchup for Darnell Mooney this week to kind of keep his great season kind of going here.
So next one up here, New York Giants number 1 wide receiver Malik Nabers facing the Carolina Panthers. A couple of bullet points just to note. First, Malik Nabers, I know he's kind of an obvious play, but he hasn't finished as a wide receiver 1 since week 3. I think he corrects that this week. Nabers lines up across the formation. He's going to get shots at all 3 starting cornerbacks. I chose to highlight Mike Jackson here, but I don't think it really matters which player he's going up against. Mike Jackson is just particularly poor. I put this in the pass run funnel report, 3 defenses to exploit in week 10. Carolina's pass defense ranks dead last in yards allowed per coverage snap, explosive pass plays allowed rate, pass rush win rate, quarterback pressure rate, and pass rush productivity. Sorry if I lost you guys there getting through that 5-point list. But the point is, like, Nabers, this is such a wonderful matchup for him. I set it and forget it. This is a Munich game in Germany, so make sure your lineup is set Saturday night. Final thing to note, Darius Slayton, number 2 receiver there, 3rd on the team in targets and PFF receiving grade. He is dealing with a concussion. The tricky thing is, sometimes these guys, we have seen some receivers clear the concussion protocol, or we have seen some Giants clear the concussion protocol quickly, looking at you, Tyrone Tracy. But with the travel, I don't know if they're really going to want to put that guy in a pressurized cabin and send him across the Atlantic. So It looks to me like this is just going to be a Malik Neighbors day through and through.
Yeah, I'm with you. I highlighted Malik Neighbors too in the man zone coverage report. He's just been, I mean, he's really good. Obviously, we don't need to overthink it too much, but looking at the numbers, like the Panthers are a very zone heavy team, top 10 in the league in that regard, but they're 28th in yards allowed per reception, 31st in yards allowed per coverage snap when in zone. And Malik Neighbors, really good, 27.3% target rate versus zone coverage. And he ranks 21st in among 93 qualifying wide receivers in fantasy points per route run. But just a better matchup here. I think he should be in for a great game. And then who's the other wide receiver you have in the wide receiver cornerback matchup articles?
San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Jawan Jennings. He is dealing with a hip injury, but he returned to practice in a limited capacity this week, facing Tampa Bay Buccaneers cornerback Tyke Smith. He's going to face all these guys, but right now, just looking at the snap counts, with Jennings mostly being a slot guy currently, probably going to be going up against Smith. The important things to note, and this was also in the pass run funnel report, Tampa Bay's defensive approach is defined by the blitz. They have the third highest blitz rate in the NFL. They're not an efficient blitzing unit. They do rack up a lot of pressure, a lot of sacks, but their quarterback pressure rate is only 15th, which is pretty low for being the third highest blitz rate. But the way that this benefits Jennings is he ranks number one among San Francisco pass catchers with at least 10 targets earned on plays with a blitz in target rate, yards per out run, and PFF receiving grade. Overall, he is having a fantastic year among 92 NFL wide receivers with at least 145 receiving snaps. He ranks 15th in target rate, 14th in yards per reception, and yards per out run. Dude's having a great year. He's been used, somewhat in a somewhat volatile manner, but with the way the current starting lineup is set up, I think that this is a great matchup for Jennings.
Yeah, I've been waiting for Jennings to come back. I think I highlighted him 1 week and he didn't end up playing that week just because he was one of the better performers like against zone coverage as well. And it's a good matchup for that too. Like the Bucks play a top 5 rate of zone coverage in the league. And Jennings leads the team in fantasy points per route run versus zone. He ranks tied for third among all wide receivers who have played at least 50 routes against zone coverage in that regard. So he's found ways to be productive. And with Brandon Ayuk out, like I'm with you in trusting him as a starter. Like again, if he's back this week, I know limited practice on Wednesday with that hip injury. We'll see what the report is today. All right. So I got a couple names to kind of quickly highlight from the wide receiver man zone coverage report. And I'll start with the positive ones. And I wanted to highlight Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's in the midst of a 5-game stretch in which he's managed just one top 50 fantasy finish among wide receivers. But I think he'll have a chance to kind of break that slump against a man-heavy defense as he ranks in the top 10 wide receivers, a minimum of 50 routes in fantasy points per route run, and he's earning an elite 33.3% target rate versus man coverage. And if you look at his last 5 games, all 4 of the past 5 games where Harrison finished outside the top 50 in fantasy points, they were against teams that played man coverage at below average rates. While the one game where he had a big game and finished as PPR wide receiver 5 came against the Miami Dolphins, who deployed man coverage at a slightly above average rate. So the Jets is who he's facing this week. They play man coverage at a top 10 rate this season. They rank right around league average in most team coverage metrics from man, including allowing a 40.8% first down plus touchdown rate, which ranks 17th. Even if he gets a lot of Sauce Gardner this week, Sauce hasn't been Sauce this season. He's falling off. He's fallen off quite a bit in coverage grade from his usual 90s over the first 2 seasons to a 68.4 this year, which ranks 36th among quarterbacks. So cornerbacks. So I like Marvin Harrison Jr. still. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but just to kind of highlight his struggles and the potential for a bounce back here. Also wanted to highlight Khalil Shakir because he's having the breakout season that I expected him to have heading into the year, really maybe even outperforming expectations to an extent because he ranks in the top 5 at his position, players with at least 100 routes, 93 qualifiers there in fantasy points per route run, and leads the Bills by far in target rate with a 28.1% versus zone coverage. This is a great matchup for him to deliver another potential strong fantasy performance against the Indianapolis Colts, who are one of the NFL's most zone-heavy defenses, but have allowed a 39.7% first down plus touchdown rate, 7.53 yards per coverage snap, and 9.1 yards per coverage target, all of which are bottom 5 marks for zone coverage units this season. So like Khalil Shakir quite a bit. All right, next up, Xavier Legette of the Carolina Panthers as well. His opportunity to deliver in this game, I think, probably comes from attacking the Giants' man coverage unit. The Giants have played man and zone coverages at about league average rates this season, but they've been much better when in zone. They rank 7th in yards allowed per reception in zone, but they rank 30th in that regard when in man at 16.0 yards per reception allowed. Xavier Legette ranks 6th in fantasy points per route run, and has a team leading 21.3% target rate against man coverage. So like his potential this week. And then just really quickly, the next 2 names are names that we covered, I think, as recently as last week. And while they weren't like amazing, I'm willing to kind of go back to them again because of favorable matchups. And the first being Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers gets another good man coverage heavy matchup against Tennessee this week. The Titans have played man coverage at an above average rate this season and rank in the bottom 10 in yards allowed per coverage snap and defensive success rate from man. And then, as we've talked about the past 3 weeks, I guess it's been with McConkey, he's among the top fantasy performers against man coverage. And despite not delivering like a really high game in week 9, he still ranks 3rd among 104 qualifying wide receivers in fantasy points per route run against man. He ranks 3rd in yards per route run against man, and he ranks 2nd in PFF receiving grade against man. So he is, to me, more than trustworthy in a favorable matchup this week. And then lastly, the other wide receiver from last week that I'm good on doubling down on, I guess, is Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts. He is the clear leading wide receiver for the team. And as a result, he ranks 6th among 93 qualifying wideouts against zone coverage in fantasy points per route run, while earning a very strong 32% target rate. The Bills have played zone coverage at a top 10 rate this season, and they are a good zone coverage unit. They rank 7th in yards per target, 3rd in yards allowed per reception from zone. But just considering Downs' success versus zone, I think he'll have a good shot to kind of bounce back after a quieter week 9 game. So, Nick, I know you wanted to highlight another Chargers wide receiver here. I kind of skipped over it quickly as I went to Josh Downs, but what were your thoughts on Quentin Johnston as well in that matchup against Tennessee?
Yeah, so what Tennessee does really well is surrender low catch rates, and they force a lot of incompletions, and we have found forced incompletions to be somewhat of a sticky stat. So it does tend to say, these guys can play. With the way that Quentin Johnston is lining up primarily on the offensive left side of the formation, he's going to face Jarvis Brownlee Jr. most of the time, who holds true to the mold there and swats a lot of passes, surrenders low catch rates, but he does allow 1.41 yards per coverage snap, which is really, really high. He's also given up 5 explosive pass plays. Quentin Johnston is a guy who he's maybe, we'll see how this ages. To me, he's beginning to look like a more efficient Gabe Davis, where he does this big play thing. I think this is, if you have Quentin Johnston, this is the type of matchup that you are rolling the dice on him with. Again, they do a pretty good job of limiting receptions, but given the way the yardage tends to pan out and the explosive plays tend to pan out, I think that this is one where we should be starting Quentin Johnston. Do you have anything to add to that, or do you want me to flip over to, because we can just use this Indianapolis wide receiver thing to move over to the sits column?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, let's talk some wide receiver sits now, and going back to Indianapolis, where you have the other Colts wide receiver, who you're not a fan of this week.
Yeah, this one hurts because I really like Michael Pittman Jr., but he's going to be going up against the Buffalo Bills perimeter cornerbacks. Now, there is a little something that we just have to kind of keep track of here, but it looks like everything is breaking right for this Bills secondary. Christian Benford is one of the many Bills to be dealing with a wrist injury. I don't know if they all practiced like a falling drill together, and no one caught the guy, and everyone broke their wrists. But Christian Benford, I was looking at the data. I think he actually took over the number one cornerback role, because early in the year they had Rasul Douglas do a shadow matchup or two on opposing receivers, and Christian Benford has now largely been handling the opposing number one on the perimeter. So good for him. He is a really, really, really good player. Rasul Douglas, also very good. So even if Michael Pittman Jr. is able to break away from Benford, or if the wrist injury keeps Benford from playing, he's practicing in full already on Wednesday, so he's going to play. But point is, he will find no solace in going up against the team's former number one cornerback in Rasul Douglas. Among 64 NFL wide receivers with at least 190 receiving snaps, Pittman ranks 31st in target rate, 35th in yards after the catch per reception, 38th in yards per out run, ties for 52nd in catch rate. He remains wide receiver 3 or 4 viable in redraft due to the big bye week slate we have going on here, but this is really a matchup that fantasy managers should avoid if they can.
Yeah. No, like I said, with Downs, like it's a very good Bills zone defense too. Like, and if I expect any of the Indianapolis, right, wide receivers to kind of overcome the matchup, it's probably Josh Downs for me, given his success already this season. Where Pittman, just like you've highlighted, he just hasn't been as effective. So yeah, fine. Including him as a sit here. How about the next guy that you have on the list, Cortland Sutton of the Denver Broncos, going against the Kansas City Chiefs this week?
Yeah, the way that Kansas City develops their number one cornerbacks is really cool. They did the same thing with L'Jarius Sneed as they've done here with Trent McDuffie. They start him in the slot, and then they eventually bring him to the perimeter. And then they once they've trained them there for a couple of years, 2, 3, they let them just kind of roam the formation in whatever way they need them to. And it's a big bummer that we lost Jalen Watson, because that guy can really play. But Cortland Sutton probably going to be going up against Trent McDuffie on a majority of his snaps this week. Trent McDuffie, among 34 NFL cornerbacks, I was trying to whittle this down either to 32 or 64, but among 34 NFL cornerbacks with at least 270 coverage snaps, McDuffie ranks 10th in PFF coverage grade, 7th in targeted rate, 10th in catch rate, 4th in yards allowed per coverage snap, and 5th in explosive pass plays allowed rate. This guy is a lockdown cornerback. It is brutal. Cortland Sutton, he's been super matchup dependent. In soft matchups, this guy has been kind of wrecking box scores in a good way. In tough matchups, though, he has really struggled. So similar to Michael Pittman Jr., I would say he's still wide receiver 4 viable in redraft, just given the teams on bye this week are pretty consequential. But this is not a matchup to target. If you have any type of guy who can replace him, you should do so. He's not, I would not be firing him up in DFS either.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, right? This is a very good Chiefs defense as a whole. Like you said, they play man coverage a lot at a top 10 rate this season. They're top 10 in first down plus touchdown rate allowed from man coverage. Troy Franklin's been really good against man. I just my usual Troy Franklin shout out there, but Cortland Sutton hasn't really, right? He just hasn't found that same level of success. Like Troy Franklin has like a 46% target rate versus man, but it's 16% for Cortland Sutton, and just 0.39 fantasy points per route run against man coverage. That ranks 62nd among wide receivers as well. So yeah, I'm with you. I think both. I mean, I say both. Like I mentioned, Troy Franklin doesn't mean I'm starting him. It's a tough matchup all around, so I'd want to avoid this group if possible as well. All right, next up on the list, you got Noah Brown of the Washington Commanders going up against Dante Jackson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do you dislike about Brown's matchup?
Dante Jackson has had a mid-career breakout, which is really cool to see. He was sort of a pushover in Carolina, but this year he has blossomed into a quality number 2 cornerback. Among 76 NFL perimeter cornerbacks with at least 100 perimeter coverage snaps, He ranks 19th in catch rate allowed, 37th in forced incompletion rate, 35th in yards allowed per coverage snap, 24th in explosive pass plays allowed rate, and 31st in success rate. Now, those are not, top 10 numbers, but for a number 2 guy, this is about as good as it gets. Noah Brown has been awesome, and I think we should continue to start him in good matchups. This one, the story is the same with all of these guys, where like next week we could be talking about them very differently. But right here against Dante Jackson, I really don't like it. Among 88 NFL wide receivers with at least 155 receiving snaps, Noah Brown ranks 42nd in target rate, 41st in contested catch rate, 59th in missed tackles forced, and 75th in yards after the catch per reception. Now, he is killing it in yards per out run. Like, I am really kicking myself for dropping this guy in like week 5 in the PFF internal 32 team league, because you are I am begging for starters in I did not realize how thin these friggin' leagues are, but anyway, I did, so that's cool. Noah Brown, he's a coin toss. He could get loose here, but Dante Jackson is also supported by the 4th highest graded safety unit with a 74.5 PFF coverage grade. It's not the matchup to go banking on this guy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Okay, so I had a couple sits as well, just again from the wide receiver man zone report, and like I don't have a ton of really kind of obvious ones, just based on the man zone chart this week. But one of them that really stood out to me, and it's DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. Now, Moore, he's obviously been a disappointment from a fantasy perspective this season, and it has me a little bit worried about him this week as well, because the Patriots have played man coverage at a top 5 rate this season, and they rank among the 5 best man defenses in yards allowed per coverage target and among the 10 best in yards allowed per coverage snap. And all of the Bears wide receivers rank outside the top 40 among 71 qualifiers in fantasy points per route run against man coverage. But DJ Moore specifically ranks last of the group. He ranks 59th in that regard. So there's not like a lot of encouraging metrics there right now. 16.9% target rate versus man, also ranks last among the team's wide receivers in receiving grade versus man and yards per route run versus man. Not sure why he and Caleb haven't meshed, but it's definitely a problem at this point. And I know he, potentially dealing with an ankle injury or something, but I haven't seen anything specific about him not being able to go this week. Okay, and then last one here, maybe a weird one, and more for deeper leagues, but Nick Westbrook-Akine is on a 4-game touchdown streak, and as a result leads the team in fantasy points per route run versus zone coverage. The Chargers have played zone coverage at the highest rate in the NFL this season and rank as a top 5 zone coverage unit in defensive success rate and first down plus touchdown rate allowed. And for Nick Westbrook-Akine, his target rate 9.1% versus zone coverage, and this being a difficult matchup, I just wanted to highlight him as that touchdown streak coming to an end here in week 10. That's not really going out on too much of a limb for a player like this to have a 5-game touchdown streak, but he was one to highlight, and I needed more than one player to talk about from the wide receiver man zone report. So there you go.
These guys can always feel kind of like
I know, yeah.
Don't chase the touchdowns.
Yeah, no, definitely don't chase the touchdowns. Okay, so next one for me, maybe going out on a limb. I don't know, but we'll see. I highlighted CeeDee Lamb in the O-line D-line matchup article this week with the caveat that this is an undeniable talent. It's going to be rare that most fantasy lineups have enough options better than him where he can be avoided. But for those that are maybe in that position, this could be the week to do so. Obviously, the main concern is going to, of course, come from Dak Prescott landing on injured reserve, leaving Lamb with Cooper Rush as his quarterback this week. The other concern comes from this week's opponent and a potential disadvantage in the trenches for the Cowboys, who rank 27th in pass blocking grade, going against the Philadelphia Eagles and their defensive line, which owns an 82.0 pass rush grade. That's the 3rd best mark in the league. On pressure dropbacks, CeeDee Lamb is seeing just an 11.5% target rate, which ranks 4th on his own team. And it's obviously a significant drop off from the 33.8% team leading target rate on non-pressure dropbacks. Now, that could change with a different quarterback under center. But part of it too is just where Lamb's routes take him and how defenses swarm to him in situations where the quarterback might scramble and things like that. But again, it's not even that I'm fully benching Lamb this week, because it's, again, very unlikely we have better options in most formats, but just downgrading him quite a bit as far as what his expectations are, like rankings wise, where, he already has 3 games where he's finished outside the top 24 PPR wide receivers this season. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if he's in that range again this week, which isn't the end of the world, but it's undeniably like a step down from his usual locked in wide receiver 1 status. So I don't know. Maybe that needed to go without saying. Maybe it didn't, but there it is. Obviously, I would love him to deliver and prove me wrong, because I have plenty of lineups where I can't bench him, and this weekend I think should tell us a lot for CeeDee Lamb and the Cooper Rush connection.
Yeah, so Cooper Rush, he tests defenses deep. He's not very good, but he gives his guys chances to win. So I think CeeDee Lamb is still viable. Like he'd probably rank him as a wide receiver 2, just to be prudent. But I think if you can trade him away, if some manager goes, I'm the one who can like buy low here, like I would sell him. I think the team will try to give Trey Lance a couple starts at some point, and the AC joint sprain that CD is dealing with, like all it takes is him for him to just fall on it, and he can be injured. They also don't have any. They're 3-5. Why would
I know.
I would put him on injured reserve. I would not put him out there and risk friggin' re-injuring this thing. The front office has totally mismanaged this team. They didn't self-scout properly. They convinced themselves that this was a contender year, and they suck. Yeah. And now they're going up against, I mean, on one hand, you can say, okay, game script is going to be in their favor, but last time I checked the spread, the Eagles are going to be 7.5 point favorites. And Dallas, I know Micah Parsons might come back, and he's very good at penetrating the line and getting tackles for loss, but he also misses tackles. This is a run funnel defense, and they're facing they're facing the Philadelphia Eagles, who might be without AJ Brown. I know he's practicing, but this to me looks like they might run a season low plays. I know that there will be people who say you never bench your studs, and I don't. If you want to play matchups, play fearlessly and don't sweat it.
Fair. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely concerned this week. Like you said, it's not necessarily that, he's completely benchable or anything like that. He's a viable play, but just tempering expectations like a lot, just because of all the situations that you meant and that you said there. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Like you said, they're 3-5. They don't have their starting quarterback, but hey, they acquired Jonathan Mingo, so maybe that turns things around going forward here. All right, let's
idiots.
I know. Let's talk running backs in a second here, but first, I want to take a quick shout out for our friends at Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set our kids up for a successful future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use those funds for their first home, new car, or even start a business. It's all online, and setting up an account could take you just 5 minutes. Get started investing with as little as $1 a day, then manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. There are no contribution limits, multiple tax advantages, and they're SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. You can share your child's unique gifting link with family and friends. So instead of them gifting things they'll outgrow for birthdays and special occasions, they can help grow your child's investments instead. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, meetfabric.com/fantasy. This is a paid promotion for the Fabric UGMA product and not for investment advisory services. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Custodial services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Okay, let's talk some running backs now. And I wanted to talk about Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers as the start this week because he's actually been pretty good this season. He had a career year last year in terms of like rushing grade, yards after contact per attempt, yards per carry, and he's on pace to set new career highs in all those marks this season as well. He's just RB24 on the year, but he's doing so with just 2 rushing touchdowns. And I think considering his play and even the matchup, he should be in a good spot to deliver this week, because there is an advantage in the trenches where the Steelers' offensive line ranks 12th in run blocking grade. The Commanders' defensive line is allowing 1.9 rushing yards before contact per attempt, which is tied for the worst mark in the league, and they rank 27th in run defense grade. So for Najee Harris specifically, when he's given at least 1 rushing yard before contact, he's averaging 7.3 yards per carry, which is the 11th best mark among 50 qualifying running backs. His 0.29 missed tackles forced per attempt in those situations ranks tied as the 6th best mark among the same qualifying running backs. And he continues to kind of lead the team's backfield in touches over these past 3 games. He's accumulated the 8th most fantasy points among running backs over that span, heading into the team's week 9 bye. So it's a favorable matchup against Washington, who offer the 8th best matchup for running backs according to our strength of schedule tool as well. So really like Najee Harris right on the fringes of that RB1 range, probably a high end RB2 this week for me.
Yeah. This one's super intriguing because the Commanders are currently 2.5 point favorites. They're coming off their bye, right?
The Steelers
are, yeah. I was curious to see what the kind of post-bye tweaks are here. Mm-hmm. And I know Jaylen Warren has been just this aggravating bench stash who should have been like a playable RB2. Very curious to see how Najee Harris, what kind of a workload he gets here. It's exciting. I think we can learn a little bit. Should we take this opportunity to talk on some of the other Steelers things we have going on here?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think go for it.
Cool. So the Steelers acquired big Mike Williams, who I messaged John, and basically, like, I was trying to think about the way they do things differently, Mike Williams and George Pickens, but it's their roles, the way they make their money is basically just like the same versions of one another. This is, old George Pickens versus George Pickens. I think that this could be really good for the offense. I think that this could soften up boxes for Najee Harris. I don't know how effective Mike Williams is going to be. There was a period when I got a little bit excited just because this could be Russ throwing jump balls to both guys all day. But Mike Williams has been like largely, this is do you believe in ghosts? Well, I don't know. Mike Williams kind of seems like he's a ghost. So maybe. What do you think of Mike Williams here? I kind of want to stash him on some benches, but he is 31 or whatever post ACL. This could just be a win sprinter.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like you said, him and George Pickens play a very similar role in a way, right? And I don't know that this offense can necessarily support 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers each week, at least consistently, right? So I think it could be one of those frustrating situations for fantasy managers. And like you said, coming off the ACL too, like he didn't look quite right when he was in there, at least to start. He started to look a little bit better as the season went on. Obviously didn't mesh with Aaron Rodgers in New York, but I mean, at least there's a little bit more opportunity for him in Pittsburgh than there is where he was with the Jets, right? So for that part of it, I don't mind it. I think he's still, a capable NFL wide receiver and could work his way into being the wide receiver 2 there. I just don't know how valuable that spot in that offense specifically is going to be, where we're even considering him as a start each week. But there could be definitely some nice matchup opportunities for him.
Yeah, I think if you have the bench space, like if you actually can afford to stash a player, I think given the state of the wide receiver position, meaning health, I think stashing Mike Williams is fine. You have to be prudent and, cut him in 2 weeks if nothing has happened. But I think that this is a very intriguing landing spot for him.
It is for sure. Okay, let's talk about one of Nate's starts at the running back position. And if you want to see Nate's full list of the start sits from his article, you can check that out now on pff.com. But for now, I'll just highlight one start and one sit at running back. And Nate's gone with Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. And as he's pointed out, we have slowly seen Tracy take hold of this Giants backfield. He even played 72% of snaps last week, which was the most for him in a game where Devin Singletary also played. And he's run the ball at least 16 times in 4 of his past 5 games. The only exception being against the Eagles when they were blown out 28-3. But I think, helping matters here for Tracy. It's a good matchup for the Giants. They have the best matchup for running backs this week against the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this season. The Giants are 5-point favorites. So like Nate says in the article, we could expect Tracy to get 20 or more carries this week. And Nate has him as the PPR RB14 this week. So a nice potential here for Tyrone Tracy.
I love this. So New York Giants, they made it in the pass run funnel report. I always start to say pass fun runnel report. Things for people to know about Tyrone Tracy and the Panthers run defense that you didn't cover, which you gave them a lot there. Carolina's offense ranks 30th in EPA per play and 31st in scoring percentage rate. This means this has resulted in facing a league high 312 run defense snaps because their opponents are just running the ball all over them once they jump out to a lead. Carolina also allows 1.8 yards before contact per rushing attempt, third most among NFL run defenses, while averaging the 7th deepest average depth of tackle and they just hold the number 6 highest spot in missed run defense tackles. You already covered the volume aspect of Tyrone Tracy's rushing workload. He already had the 3rd and 4th down role locked up. He was, Devin Singletary gets a little bit here and there, but he's the primary guy. The thing that I'm really most excited for, though, is last week, Tyrone Tracy took 80% of the 2-minute drill snaps, which is basically the PPR fantasy gold mine. So that's a really big deal here. Mm-hmm. I think Tyrone Tracy, I would bump him up from RB14. I think he's an RB1 this week.
Let's go. Yeah, love Tyrone Tracy. Okay, let's talk about some running back sits now. And I went with Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Returned to the lineup last week for Jacksonville, but wasn't full-time or wasn't a full-time contributor. He shared snaps with Tank Bigsby as expected. Both players entered that game banged up. But so on top of the concerns of a potentially shared workload again this week, Etienne's really kind of struggled to live up to his ADP from this offseason. He's yet to have cracked the top 20 PPR finishers at his position on any given week. And then for this matchup specifically, there is a disadvantage in the trenches where the Jaguars offensive line ranks 23rd in run blocking grade, 20th in rushing yards created before contact per attempt, while the Vikings have allowed just 1.2 rushing yards before contact per attempt. That's the 12th best mark, but they rank 3rd in run defensive grade this season. Etienne is averaging just 2.7 yards per carry when contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage. That ranks 33rd among qualifying running backs in those situations. Sorry, not at or behind the line of scrimmage, at least 2 yards or fewer from the line of scrimmage. And then he owns a 57.4 rushing grade that ranks 37th among the same backs and circumstances. So just kind of considering the matchup and the unknown of whether he'll be a full-time contributor again this week, I'm avoiding Travis Etienne where possible this week. And let's head back to Nate's start sit article for a running back sit this time. And Nate included Javonte Williams again. And I think for good reason, because as he points out in the article, Williams has slowly but surely actually lost playing time over the past month. He played 67% of snaps in week 6, and that has dropped a few percentage points each week to the point where he was down to 54% of snaps last week. Now, there's also been rumblings from the coaching staff about Audric Estime seeing more opportunities, which hasn't happened yet, but it does seem like it's possible at some point. And then, as Nate points out, like most running backs, Williams ends up with more production when the Broncos are winning than when they are losing. He averages 56.4 rushing yards per game in wins, 26.3 rushing yards per game in losses. And according to PFF strength of schedule tool, the Broncos have the 5th worst matchup for running backs against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have allowed just 3.7 yards per attempt. That's the 2nd lowest mark in the league. They're also the Broncos 8-point underdog. So Williams just might not see as many rushing opportunities this week. Nate has him as the PPR RB 29 this week.
Yeah, one thing to note, center Luke Wattenberg, who is a good pass protector and a bad run blocker, is coming off injured reserve. They might stick with backup Alex Forsyth, who is a bad pass blocker and a good run blocker. That will impact Javante's ability to run up the middle. But to put a bow on this, I dropped Javonte Williams in one league for Taysom Hill.
There you go. All right. See, that's how things can turn around here for fantasy purposes. All right. So the next section that we usually cover is some waiver wire names, right? For the week, and kind of our overall thoughts on how to approach them. But given the NFL trade deadline this week, and the breaking news type situations, we'll kind of combine the waiver wire names this week with some thoughts on players involved in these fantasy relevant news items. And I want to start with the news that we got basically right before we started recording, in that Chuba Hubbard was given a 4-year contract extension with the Carolina Panthers. He's been great this season, but as we know, the Carolina Panthers also spent the 46th pick in this year's NFL draft on a running back, Jonathan Brooks, who we haven't seen yet. But they have a backfield there now of Miles Sanders, who's also on a 4-year contract, Chuba Hubbard now on a new 4-year contract, and Jonathan Brooks on his rookie contract as an early 2nd-round pick. So, Nick, what were your kind of initial thoughts on this Brooks Hubbard saga here in Carolina?
Well, I have to start Brooks in one league, and I think I'll probably be happy if he touches the ball 3 times. This is crazy. This is so weird. It's such bizarre timing for Chuba to get the extension the same week that Jonathan Brooks is getting. I like this front office. Dan Morgan. I don't know. It seemed like Joe Shane. When they pulled off the Brian Burns trade, where they like gave a bunch of things to pay this pass rusher who was like already toward the back of his prime. Maybe Brian Burns is awesome, but they gave up a lot to get the right to pay him. I looked at that, and it just looks like both of these guys maybe aren't very good at their job. And I kind of thought one of them maybe was. I don't know. This is so weird. I don't know what to tell people. I think Chuba Hubbard, I guess the biggest thing to take away is that the team just told you they're going to use Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So start him. If you have him, you can still start him. I don't know what they're going to do with Jonathan Brooks. I don't even know why they drafted. At this point, it doesn't. I always thought Jonathan Brooks, no, they're going to play him because drafting him was a dumb idea. But since they did the dumb idea, they're going to play him. Right. But now it looks like they maybe are doing multiple bad ideas. I don't know. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, it's weird asset management, like for sure, right? There's no doubt about that. But yeah, I guess the positive way of looking at it is that maybe, both can be fantasy relevant. We see that in Detroit. The problem with that is that this offense feels like way off from getting to that level of where the Lions are in terms of offense, like where we don't even know what their quarterback is going to be, for the future. They don't have a clear wide receiver one either. I don't view this offense as one that can support 2 weekly fantasy running backs consistently. Now for this season, like I talked about it quite a bit in the offseason, how Brooks was kind of an easy fade at his ADP, which was like top 24-ish, just coming off the ACL, likely going to be eased into the offense, a poor offense at that, things like that. But Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think, for this week, I'm not really concerned about Jonathan Brooks all that much. I'm fine starting Chuba Hubbard where I have him as I've been the past few weeks, just because he's been so good. He's like top 10 in PFF rushing grade as well this season. So he's earned it, but it is a weird situation right now. Yeah. All right. The other trade, or I guess this is, yeah, we mentioned the Mike Williams trade. So the other trade that happened that was fantasy relevant on trade deadline day was the Cincinnati Bengals acquiring Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears. Khalil Herbert was essentially not used at all in Chicago. Where the hell did the Khalil Herbert picture go? I don't have it. Okay, so no Khalil Herbert picture. I'm sorry, folks. We'll leave Jonathan Brooks up there. Um, what did you think about the Cincinnati Bengals going out to acquire Khalil Herbert from Chicago?
I I think from a team level perspective, it's great. From a Chase Brown perspective, I kind of wish they hadn't. Um, I think Khalil Herbert is sort of the bizarre, compact running back who isn't very good. Like he isn't very good at catching passes, but he is a really efficient rusher. Which if you have to share the backfield, and you want to keep starting the star there, meaning Chase Brown, this is the type of guy who you kind of just have to go, okay, this is not, this is fine. This is fine. If they're going to take away some rushing work, that's okay. We'd prefer, to keep the passing down work. And I think that they will do that because Chase Brown, I talked about this on the show early in the season. He was an excellent prospect as a pass protector. Now that's a bit of an oxymoron in running back being an excellent pass protector. I get that, but he was a really good prospect, and he just kind of got dusted twice by like Myles Garrett in his rookie year, and because he had a low PFF pass blocking grade because of that, which he got his butt whooped. But people got scared, and it's just. But if you go look at if you went and looked at Chase Brown's pass blocking grade week by week, he was great outside of that one where he got trounced. Anyway, I think Chase Brown remains. I think he's basically the same guy that he's been over the last couple of weeks. Maybe he loses, I don't know, 3 carries per week, but they loved Zach Moss, and it really took a long time for them to accept that they needed to just get Chase Brown going. Chase Brown's acceleration reminds me of Derrick Henry, where there's this, you can see it is, the acceleration is exponential. As he gets the ball and he approaches the line, he is still accelerating and he is moving way faster than the other people. They're not going to just dust the guy. As for Khalil Herbert, probably worth a bench stash here. I don't know if you can start him. If we get him up to 8 to 10 carries per week, I think in specific roster constructions that is startable, particularly in the Bengals offense. I don't, man, would you put him alongside like Braylon Allen in terms of the backup running back stashes? I don't think he's that high.
Yeah.
Who might you compare him to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I'd put him that high either, right? Like, because I think, like you said, there's a chance that he'll get some touches, like on early downs or something like that. But neither one of these guys, I don't think he'll get passing down work. Like they just got Travion Williams back, and I think he makes sense that that some of that passing down work would go to him. So even if Chase Brown goes down, obviously Zach Moss, it seems like he's going to miss some time here with this neck injury. So I don't know that I'd necessarily treat, Khalil Herbert as like the Braylon Allen type handcuff at this point. I'm blanking on a name that I can compare him to, but I'm not expecting the full 3-down role essentially that he would absorb. Where I think Chase Brown at least can get some receiving down work, like you said, as well as the early down work. But I don't think Khalil Herbert kind of profiles as that 1-for-1 replacement essentially.
Yeah, I think maybe he's similar to Tyler Algier right now. Khalil Herbert, that is. Anyway, what else we got? We got some other guy who's we got to talk about Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who has a non-throwing shoulder injury, and there are all sorts of reports out here. There's stuff that they're talking about, like that he may be shut down, that he might miss a couple of weeks. This run game was already scary in like the worst way with Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby there. If they're taking their starting cube, if we got to go to CJ Beathard now, is that who the backup is? I'm doing that off
I think
the
it's
top of my
Mac
head.
Jones.
Okay, that's a little more competent then. I don't know. I think that this probably hurts everyone other than, I mean, geez, we might not even get Evan Ingram with the high volume usage here. Brian Thomas might be the only guy that you feel kind of okay starting.
Yeah, it's not great, obviously, right? We don't know what to expect necessarily from a Mac Jones as far as, Brian Thomas Jr. and Evan Ingram. I'm with you. I think, for me, Brian Thomas still somebody that I think I kind of have to start. He's just been so good. I know he had like his down week last week. He was dealing with the chest injury, but I think he'll have a shot to bounce back this week. He's just been so efficient, so effective going against the Vikings as well. Like they're one of those teams that are more zone heavy. They're not amazing coverage wise in that regard. Brian Thomas Jr. has been really good against zone coverage this season. So it's a potential matchup where if the quarterback is just a like average to above average and can get him the ball, like it's one that he can take advantage of specifically. Evan Ingram possibly too. Like again, it depends on what your tight ends look like. Like no Brock Bowers this week, no David Njoku, no Tucker Kraft, right? Like there's might not be options where you have somebody better than Evan Ingram. So I think you most people are going to probably have to roll with Ingram where you have him, but obviously downgrade here with the Trevor Lawrence injury, and who knows if he's obviously unlikely to play this week. They're saying he could require surgery. There's a lot of reports going out there, so we'll have to kind of play it by ear with T Law and company.
Yeah, this is the least fun week to do matchups to avoid and recommended sits because the bye weeks, like this is probably the heaviest hitting bye week thus far. Anyway, let's close this out here. We got a couple defenses to hit on. The New York Giants versus Carolina Panthers. New York Giants, we get the revenge week narrative for Brian Burns. He probably will be able to make good on that. I have not seen anything on this. Have you seen anything on which quarterback will start for Carolina this week?
I believe it's Bryce Young. From what
Did
I
they
saw,
name him?
yeah, you know what it is? The weeks blend together for me, so I can't remember what day I see things where I see Bryce Young is going to start again. But I remember treating it as Bryce Young being the starter. So I could be wrong, but it feels like it could be him again this week.
So in the QB defense streamers article, I broke down Bryce Young and Andy Dalton. They're way more similar than people are recognizing here. I went through the 8 different passing statistics, and they are within striking distance of each other, basically all over the place. Andy Dalton is maybe a little bit better at pocket navigation, but Giants defense should be able to exploit this one here. The second matchup that I like a lot, Los Angeles Chargers defense versus the Tennessee Titans. Man, this is so rough. Chargers open the week. We talked about this 8.5 point favorite. It's just going to be a pass rush bonanza. Fantasy managers should pay attention to Khalil Mack, who showed up on the injury report last week, though he is a guy who basically plays through almost everything. So keep an eye on that one. But I think that this should just be a sack festival with Mack and Joey Bosa going after whomever is starting for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah. So it was Bryce Young. It is for Carolina, and it's Will Levis for the Tennessee Titans this week. So it's it should be fun. I mean, because Will Levis has been much worse than Mason Rudolph at avoiding sacks as well. So Khalil Mack versus that Tennessee offensive line is a ridiculous mismatch. Joey Bosa, if he can stay healthy there, Mr. Glass would also be able to take advantage of this situation. But yeah, I'm with you. I like both of these calls. Sometimes it's about, the offense that we're attacking sometimes more than the defense, like specifically for Giants against Carolina there. Like you said, the Panthers have not been great. Tennessee also in among the bottom of the league as far as offense goes. So fine picking on those guys this week. But that is going to do it for us this week. Thank you all again for tuning in. Feel free to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us a ton. But Nic, thank you as well for doing this with me every single week here and going through all the names and numbers. I appreciate it very much. Please remind everybody what you have going on PFF.com this week.
Tuesday mornings, QB defense streamers. Wednesday mornings, pass run funnel report. Wednesday mornings, wide receiver cornerback matchups to target. And then you can come find us here on YouTube and Spotify and wherever else this show exists.
Yes, and out into the universe that we are. I have no idea all the places, but Nic's right. You can always follow along the PFF Fantasy Podcast, and we'll do the wide receiver man zone coverage report article that'll be out now. People can check that out on PFF.com, as well as the O-line D-line matchup articles to target and avoid. That'll be out Friday morning from me. IDP rankings, IDP fantasy report. Those are out now for my friends of the defensive side of the ball. And of course, make sure to check out Nate's rankings, start, sit, recap articles, all of that stuff on PFF. And yeah, good luck to everybody in week 10. And until next time, peace out.